Imagine carrying a pregnancy for 5 long years, mocked by neighbors, abandoned by friends, and even feared by your own family. But just when you thought that you would die with the child inside your womb, a voice came from within, and it wasn't your imagination. It wasn't the voice of anyone around. It was the voice of your own baby in the womb, asking to speak to your husband. Once upon a time, there lived a woman whose name was Bumi. For 5 years, she carried a pregnancy that refused to end. Bumi suffered from severe morning sickness that left her weak. Her feet swelled so much that she could barely walk. She craved things that she never ate before: raw rice, charcoal, and even sand that she got from the beach. Her body behaved like every pregnant woman as her stomach grew into a ball. But what Bumi did not know was that her pregnancy was different. Each time she went for a scan, the doctors shook their heads in confusion. "Madam, there is no baby here," they would say, revealing to her that her womb was empty. The first time it happened, Bumi called the doctors incompetent as she went to another hospital to check. However, the results came back the same. Every hospital, every scan, every doctor told her the same thing, that her womb was empty. But Bumi knew what she felt. She felt the kicks and the movements in the stillness of the night. Bumi knew that she carried life within her, even if the whole world doubted and called her mad. Her husband, Bode, tried to be patient in the beginning, but as the years went by, his patience turned into shame, and his shame progressed to anger. "5 years, Bumi," he shouted one morning. "5 whole years. You are eating me into poverty, dragging me into ridicule. Everyone laughs at me, saying that my wife is pregnant with emptiness. If there's a child, then deliver it. If not, stop disgracing me now," he said to Bumi, whose heart broke into a million pieces. That night, as she lay on her bed in tears, clutching her swollen belly, something strange began to happen. Her stomach grew hot, as though fire burned inside of her. Suddenly, she heard a voice calling out to her. "Mother," the voice said, as Bumi froze, her hands trembling. The voice was not in her ears. It was not outside the room. It came from within her womb. "Mother, do not be afraid. I am here. I have always been here," the voice said as tears poured down Bumi's eyes. "My child, you are alive. Why do the doctors not see you?" Bumi asked as the voice replied her calmly. "Because I made myself hidden. The eyes of men cannot behold me until the appointed time. However, mother, you must speak to my father on my behalf. Something terrible is about to happen, and if it does, father will not be here when I am born." Bumi's eyes widened in terror. She sat back and listened as her unborn child warned her of an impending danger. Her husband Bode was planning on paying his uncles a visit in the village. Since after his father's burial 3 years ago, Bode never paid a visit to the village. His uncles were all interested in his father's properties, but Bode, being the smart lawyer that he was, used the law to frustrate their efforts. So, his uncles hated him for it. They called him arrogant, stubborn, and proud. They wanted the family land and his late father's house, but Bode stood like a wall against them. So when they sent a message that a peace meeting had been arranged, Bode's heart softened. "My uncles have finally come to their senses. Tomorrow, I will drive down to the village and settle this matter once and for all." But that same night, the voice spoke from her womb. "Mother, tell father not to go." Bumi trembled as she asked the voice why. The voice then began to speak to her, saying, "Because the meeting is not for peace, mother. They have gone diabolical. Charms have been prepared. They want him dead, and if father goes tomorrow, he will not return." Bumi's body shook with fear. She sat up quickly and shook her husband awake. "Bode, don't go to the village tomorrow. Please, don't go to that meeting. It's a trap." Bode rubbed his eyes angrily. "Bumi, stop this madness. Now you want to dictate my life? I am a man. I will face my uncles, and no one can kill me. Listen to me." Bumi cried, clutching her belly. "The baby spoke. He says your life is in danger. Please, I beg you, Don't go, but they laughed bitterly. Now the baby is talking, yeah? Bumi, you are sick. You need deliverance. I will go tomorrow and you will see that nothing will happen. Morning came and Bude dressed sharply in his native attire. Bumi wept bitterly, falling on her knees as she begged him not to go, but Bude brushed her off and drove away. Hours later, he arrived at the village square and met his uncles who welcomed him with forced smiles. They slaughtered a goat, poured palm wine, and sang songs of reconciliation, but beneath the fake smiles and laughter was something evil. Hours passed, and the time came for them to drink. One of his uncles handed him a calabash of palm wine, and the moment Bude touched it, his stomach churned. Sweat broke out on his forehead as his body began to shake. Bude felt his throat tighten as his breath became shallow. Bude staggered to his feet as he gasped for air. His uncles all looked at him with satisfaction, knowing that their plan had worked. Bude winced in pain as he fell to the ground, struggling for his life. His eyes bulged, his lips quivered, and his hands clawed at the earth. In his last moment, he thought of Bumi's face, the tears in her eyes, the desperation in her voice as she warned him not to go. If only I had listened, were his final words before his body went still. His uncles all looked at each other as they watched him take his final breath. It is done. The stubborn goat has finally been taught a big lesson. Now, we shall take what belongs to us, they said as they all laughed in unison. Without delay, they carried out the burial that same evening. Not a word was sent to Bumi, not even a message of sympathy. By the time she heard the news, it was already too late. Her husband had been buried like a dog, without her consent, without honor, and without dignity. Bumi screamed until her voice broke. She fell to the floor, holding her stomach as the child inside of her twisted. Mother, the voice whispered from her womb, calm but strong. Do not be afraid. Father is gone, but justice will speak. Those who mocked you will one day bow, and those who shed his blood will pay. Days later, Bude's uncle stormed the city. Their faces hard, their voices sharp. Woman, they said, standing in her house, your husband is dead, and according to tradition, all his properties belong to us. Hand over the documents to your husband's house, his land, his company, and his cars. You are nothing to us now. After all, you never had a child for him, so you have no right over his wealth, they said to Bumi, who stood frozen, her eyes red from days of weeping. Her lips trembled, but before she could reply, a sudden heat spread through her belly. Her whole body stiffened, and then it came again. Mother, do not fear them. Open your mouth and speak the words I place inside of you. Bumi gasped, holding her swollen stomach, her eyes darting between the menacing faces of her husband's uncles. Then, without planning it, words rolled out of her mouth like thunder. You buried him like a dog. You mocked me, called me barren, called me mad. But hear me today. He left something behind. The child you cannot see, the one you say does not exist, is alive in my womb, and he will speak against you. The uncles all bursted out into mocking laughter. Child, this woman has lost her mind though, one shouted as he continued to speak. 5 years of swollen belly and nothing. You better pack your things and leave this house. Within 24 hours, they said as they all left the house, leaving Bumi in the pool of her own tears. That night, Bumi could not sleep. She knew how evil her husband's uncles were and knew that they were behind the death of her husband. In her fear and confusion, she called up her mother to confide in her. Bumi narrated how her husband's evil uncles killed her husband and buried him in the village without her consent, stating that she was not one of them because she did not have a child for her husband. Bumi told her mother that her unborn child wondered about her husband's trip to the village on that fateful day. I warned Bode, but he did not listen. Now he is dead, and his uncles want to take everything from me. Bumi cried out to her mother, who rushed to her house immediately to meet with her. Bumi thought that opening up to her mother was a good idea. She watched as her mother questioned her sanity when she told her that her unborn baby spoke to her from the womb. Bumi, her mother screamed, her eyes blazing with fury as she spoke. Why do you always bring shame to this family? First, you claim to be pregnant for almost 5 years now. You are saying that your unborn baby now speaks to you from the womb. What sort of games are you playing? She asked Bumi, who did everything possible to convince her that she was telling the truth, but her mother was not willing to buy it. Bumi did everything to make her baby speak in the presence of her mother, but the baby said nothing. Bumi knew how crazy she sounded, but something within her convinced her that her mother would believe her story. Then, her mother's eyes softened suddenly and her voice dropped to a calm tone. All right, Bumi, she said, patting her daughter's trembling hands. I believe you. Maybe you are right. Maybe what you're carrying is real. But this matter is too heavy for us alone. You need prayers, my child. Serious prayers. I have called the strong man of God to come pray for you. He will be here in half an hour, she said to Bumi, who nodded her head in agreement. Not long afterwards, the pastor arrived and revealed to Bumi that she was not pregnant with a child. Rather, it was an evil spirit speaking to her, and that the earlier they banished it, the earlier she would get her life back together. Woman, he said in a loud voice, stretching his hands towards her belly. This is not pregnancy. This is an evil projection. What you carry is a demon, and the voice you are hearing is the voice of the devil. If you don't let us cast it out, it will kill you. Bumi shook her head violently, holding her belly tighter. No, pastor, this is my child. He is not evil. The pastor smirked and looked at her mother. Madam, if you love your daughter, you will let me do this deliverance. However, it will require a sacrifice, a huge amount of money, a special seed that will move the power that I carry within. Bumi's mother, desperate for deliverance, opened her handbag and handed him a huge amount of money. Man of God, please save my daughter, she said to the pastor, who slid the money into his pocket and began to pray, pointing at Bumi and rebuking the demon in her stomach. Bumi wept as she began to shake her head. I am not possessed. You are wrong, she said to the pastor, who ignored her completely as he sprinkled holy water on her face. He then pulled out a vial from his pocket, urging her to drink, saying that the drink would banish the demon within and set her free. But Bumi knew not to believe his words. She knew that this was not a holy drink. It was poison, and Bumi knew that taking it would endanger her life. Her lips trembled as she whispered desperately, My child, please help me. Immediately she said this, a voice spoke to her from her womb, strong and commanding. Mother, do not be afraid. I will give you a secret. Speak it out loud. When you say it, watch what happens. Bumi froze as she listened. The voice told her to tell the pastor that she knew about the child that he buried behind his church, the child that no one must ever hear about. Bumi opened her eyes wide in terror. She turned and looked at the pastor as she began to speak with so much confidence. Man of God, or should I say murderer? Does your congregation know about the child that you buried behind the church, the one you killed with your own hands? The entire room fell silent as the pastor dropped the bottle instantly. He staggered backwards, his eyes bulging as he began to stammer. What did you say? He asked as his lips trembled. Bumi stepped forward, fire in her eyes as she continued to speak. You heard me. The blood of that child is crying from the ground against you. And now, you dare call my son a demon? The pastor let out a scream as he ran out of her house in terror. Bumi's mother opened her eyes in shock. She could not believe what she was hearing. She asked Bumi how she knew about the child, and Bumi informed her that the child in her womb told her about the pastor's secret. For a moment, she wanted to doubt, but something crossed her mind as she asked Bumi to tell her a secret that only her knew. If this child in your womb truly speaks, then tell me something only I know, a secret that I have never told anyone in this world. Bumi swallowed hard, her palms sweating as she pressed them against her swollen belly. She then whispered, My child, what should I say? The voice inside her answered, calm and steady. Mother, tell her about the night that she tried to end her life. When she was only 18, tell her about the rope that she tied to the ceiling and how she wept in silence before cutting it down. Bumi gasped, her heart racing. Mama, she began, her voice trembling. When you were 18, you tied a rope to the ceiling. You wanted to end it all, but something stopped you that night. You cried alone in the dark and told no one, not even your parent, not even your husband. Only you know. Her mother's legs gave way as she staggered backwards, her hand covering her mouth. Tears welled up in her eyes as she asked Bumi how she knew about the incident. I buried that memory in the grave of my heart. Not even your father knew about it. Bumi held her belly tighter as tears streamed down her face. The child in my womb told me, she said to her mother, who for the first time began to believe all that she had told her. However, before they could speak further, a loud knock thundered at the door. "Open this door, woman!" a male voice roared. Bumi's heart sank as she recognized the voice. It was her late husband's uncle, the one who had declared that Bumi was nothing to them without a child. 5 of his uncles stood outside, their faces grim, as they banged at the door continuously. Before Bumi could answer the door, the voice inside her womb spoke with authority. "Mother, do not be afraid. They have gone to the shrine to fortify themselves. They want to take that which does not belong to them. But fear not, because I will not allow it happen." Bumi's mother asked again, through the closed door, her voice shaking. "What do you want here at this hour?" Bumi's mother asked, as the men stood outside banging and screaming for them to open the door. "Woman, stop wasting our time. We have come for what belongs to us. Open this door. Bumi must pack her things this night, and she must hand over every single document of Bode's house, his company, his lands and properties." However, before Bumi could reply, the baby's voice thundered from her womb. "Mother, listen to me. They believe their charms will bind you, but tonight I will turn their weapons against them. Open the door for them." With trembling hands, Bumi unlocked the door as the men stormed in, their eyes red as they screamed out in anger. "Woman," they commanded, "kneel before us. Take out all the documents of your husband's properties and hand them over now," they said to Bumi, whose stomach burned like fire. Her lips trembled as her baby's voice came forth, fierce and commanding. "Tell them to flog themselves." Bumi's eyes widened. She stammered at first, but then commanded them to flog themselves as the men, controlled by an unseen hand, turned their canes on themselves and began to weep. The sound of lashes filled the room as they screamed out in pain, but their arms moved without restraint. Blood streaked their backs, their clothes tore apart, yet they could not stop. Bumi's mother clutched her head with both hands. "Jesus, what am I seeing? These old men are flogging themselves like children." "Flog harder," the baby's voice thundered again, as they whipped themselves mercilessly, rolling on the floor, their charms useless against the unseen power that was now controlling them. "Please, please stop," one of them begged, his face covered in sweat and blood. But the baby's voice rose a final time. "Your wickedness has caught up with you. You killed my father. You mocked my mother. Now the shame of your hands will destroy you as you eat from the gutters and roam the earth endlessly." Suddenly, the men began to laugh and scream at the same time as they tore their clothes and staggered out of the house into the street, wailing and raving like madmen. In that moment, Bumi felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She cried out, clutching her belly as her water broke. "Mama, it's happening. I think I'm in labor," she said to her mother, who rushed her to the hospital. The doctors who had mocked her before, those who had sworn that her womb was empty, stared in shock as they placed her on the delivery bed. It was not up to a month that she came to the hospital last for a check, and the doctors swore that her womb was empty. Now, here she was, in labor, about to birth a real baby. Everyone could not believe their eyes. After 5 long years of carrying what the world called emptiness, Bumi gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. She named him Bode Jr. after his late father, and as she held him for the very first time, the baby opened his eyes wide, staring at her with unusual calm. Bumi could not understand why her baby decided to come now, after 5 long years of waiting. What she did not know was that her son's delay had been divine protection. For 5 long years, he hid himself from the eyes of men, waiting for the right time to be revealed. If he had come earlier, her husband's uncles, blinded by greed, would have destroyed them both before destiny could unfold. But now, after justice had begun to strike her enemies, the baby chose to arrive, carrying not just life but the promise of restoration. What the world mocked as emptiness had been a shield all along, and Bumi's tears of sorrow finally turned into tears of triumph. The lesson to be learned from this story is that God's timing is perfect, no matter how strange or delayed it may seem to human eyes. What looks like shame or delay to the world may in fact be divine protection, hiding us from the dangers we cannot see. Bumi's pain, ridicule, and long wait were not for nothing. They were part of a greater plan that preserved her life and exposed the wickedness around her. Patience, faith, and trust in God's hidden workings will always lead to victory, for no evil can prevail against a destiny that heaven has sealed. I hope you enjoyed the story.